Hi, Disability History class. It's hard to believe it, but our class is almost over. It's been a really intense and fast-moving term, and you have all done a great job by both keeping up and digging deep into the readings and the other assignments. So congratulations on that. A few notes about what's coming up. Everything for this unit, Unit 5, is due Friday, January 19th at 11:59 p.m. Then you have a full week, Friday to Friday, to complete the final exam, which is open book, and your two big assignments, the special research topic paper and the digital resource assignment. Those three things are due Friday, January 26th at 11:59 p.m. Note, all except 3 of you have submitted your proposals for those two big assignments, and they all look good. Be sure to look carefully at the assignment rubric and description so you can get a sense about how to shape that assignment as you work on it. For those of you 3 who have not submitted the proposals, that's okay. That means you have a few points off of your final grade, but it's not the end of the world. My real concern is that you know about these assignments, which are each due 15% of the grade. Okay, now for this, our last unit, Unit 5. We get to the real heart and soul of disability studies and disability history, and that is the organization and activism of people with disabilities. For much of this class, we have felt the burden of oppression and repression and the awful and heartrending and tragic misunderstandings that people with disabilities have experienced in the past. It's been tough reading, and imagine how tough it was to experience it. In this unit, we see activism and liberated self-concepts and self-definitions by people with disability. People with disabilities began to define themselves and to fight to shape their own lives rather than being defined and shaped by others. What we will do in this unit, or the learning objectives, we will learn about 1. The rise of disability activism and civil rights movement, mostly in and after the 1960s. Second, we will learn about 3 really important critical laws. Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, the IDEA PL 94-142, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, and which was passed in 1974, and the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, the strongest federal civil rights act for people with disabilities, which was passed and signed in a great public ceremony in 1990. Third, we will also learn about the parameters of contemporary disability rights issues, particularly independent living, assisted suicide, telethon protests, and leadership positions. Given the modern period of this unit, there are a lot of videos, about 90 minutes of videos, so plan accordingly. And here's what you will hear and see. First, there's a 3.5-minute video podcast, 3.5-minute podcast on the impact of the disability rights movement on one person, Ben Matlin. Then there is a terrific 13-minute video about Ed Roberts. Many people call him the father of the disability rights movement, and you'll love him. Then a 9-minute video about the IDA, the Individual of Liberty, suddenly forgotten the name, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, from 1974, and what it has done for special education. Now, it's important to note that today, a lot of people think about disabilities and know about disabilities because they had a classmate with disabilities in their school. And this is only because of the IDEA that came about in the mid-1970s. For those of us who went to school before that time, or before the 1980s and 90s, when the law began to be implemented, and it is still not fully implemented 40 years later, there were no children with disabilities in their classrooms. I graduated from high school in 1976, and I never saw a child with disabilities in or around my elementary or secondary school ever. Before the IDEA, children with disabilities were not required to go to school, and schools were not required to receive them. So think about that. My understanding of disabilities is so different from the beginning, it's so different, so much less than it is for those of you who went to school with a classmate who was diagnosed with a significant or even minor reading disorder, or who had cerebral palsy, or who used a wheelchair. My older brother David is severely dyslexic, and when he was in elementary and high school in the 1960s, teachers flatly told him and told my parents that he was stupid. Stupid was the word they used. The IDEA changed all that. Even if insufficiently implemented now, we do have special education classrooms and training and policies for accommodation. And we have ramps in schools and a general, even if only basic understanding that any and every kid has a right to come to school, no matter what. That's the IDEA. Okay, then you will see an 18-minute video about the historic civil rights demonstration of people with disabilities in 1977 in San Francisco that resulted in the signing of the 504 Regulations Act. It's the first federal civil rights law protecting people with disabilities, 1977. Then there is a great 30-minute video about the dynamic and really transformative Deaf President Now movement at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. in 1988. That was a movement that, much like today's Black Lives Matter movement, erupted from the ground up and took a lot of people by surprise and instigated both change in policy and practice. Then you'll see a 7.5-minute video on the signing of the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, in 1990. Watch especially for my favorite scene after President Bush signs the law and he hands the pen around. Then a 4-minute video about disability rights activists protesting the Jerry Lewis Telethon. This is a really interesting political argument that goes to the heart of much of the contemporary disability rights movement, the call for nothing about us without us, and also no more pity. And then hidden under all those video links is another link to a short written piece by Mary Johnson called Unanswered Questions about the politics of the right to die movement. Then you have 3 other readings: the last chapter of the Kim Nielsen book, a great essay by Paul Longmore, one of the leading scholars in the history of disability, in whose memory the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability is named, and Mary Kate is doing her digital resource assignment on that great place. And then third, a terrific essay by Sarah Rose on the origins of disability rights in higher education. All of these videos and articles are about the civil rights movements amongst people with disabilities in the late 20th century. It's all really exciting stuff. Then you will have 3 discussion questions. I'll give you a clue about what they are. One asks you to consider the concept of invisible disabilities after watching a 7-minute TED Talk by an Ohio high school student. The second question is about the topic of assisted suicide and the Jerry Lewis telethons and the links between the two. And the third question asks for your favorite scene from some of the videos that you watched. Discussion forum posts are due Friday, January 19th at 11:59 p.m. There's no Module 5 quiz. Much of this material will be covered in the final exam. Then again, you have until the following Friday, January 26th at 11:59 p.m. to complete the final exam, which is open book, and the 2 major assignments, the special research topic paper and the digital resource assignment. So enjoy this last exciting week of readings and assignments.